Ah, I see. Someone's interested in hearing tales told of lost people and places, or is it just the dark and macabre that piques your interest? Whatever it is, I'm glad you're here. I have much to tell. But before we start our journey, we must first introduce the players, the protagonists. No, that's not right. Rather, the poor, unfortunate individuals that were to be the focus of a story I call The Forgotten. Gathandriel, the black sheep of a powerful family, was given a choice. He could sacrifice his ethics and, in turn, wield power like the rest of his family, or stand by his morals and be cast out from everything he knew. Taking the latter was an easy decision. Living with that decision would be much more challenging than Gathandriel could have even begun to imagine. Borgi, a hill dwarf, was a grandmother to a great number of offspring and reveled in her role in the clan. Unfortunately, due to unforeseen circumstances, one of her grandchildren went missing, and she was blamed for it. Even though she believed she was not responsible, her pride wouldn't let her rest until she found her grandchild, or died trying. Klaus Footsmalls, a past his prime halfling who regularly forgets his age, was a devotee follower of Auriel in the small rural town he's from. Wearing his trademark rabbit-eared hat, Klaus has set out to join an illustrious magic academy with his friend Matthias. Will his carefree attitude survive? Only time will tell. Matthias Barnes, a young man about to start a new chapter in his life, recently accepted with his friend Klaus to a school designed to teach and enhance their magical prowess. Matthias eagerly awaits for his time to prove himself and show the world what he's capable of. Unfortunately, fate would test his resolve much earlier than expected. Now, most of these individuals truly had nothing in common, so what forces chose to conspire against them? It's both simple and complicated. You see, sometimes when enough people believe something with enough passion, it can change the world around us. The one thing everyone had was the disappointment of many folk. Some had family that thought they were let down by past actions, and others had classmates who felt cheated out of not getting into classes they had dreamed of. Regardless, disappointment is a powerful emotion, and thus can be a potent source of magic. So being cursed by such a powerful ritual, each person fell into a magical slumber. On top of that, there are many dark forces out there waiting for such a group of individuals to fall prey to curses and other afflictions. So the night the curse took hold, they were transported far from their homes by agents of a malevolent power. Waking from their cursed sleep, they found themselves deep underground. At first, tensions were high. Everyone was distrustful of each other, at least until Matthias and Klaus recognized each other. The two's childlike antics put the other's mind at ease. Working together, they began to explore their surroundings. At first, finding a crate with some magical supplies, a bag of holding and magical resources for spells all packed up neatly. This would be the group's first lesson. While everything was useful, the bag of holding was also cursed, needing magical energy to keep a timer embroidered in beads from expiring. What was it counting down? Nobody knew, but everyone agreed they didn't want to find out. Still, they consider themselves lucky to have been left anything. Also in the chamber was a control panel that seemed to use gems and crystals to operate a set of mining carts on tracks that followed scaffolding up and into darkness. Two separate spaces were empty on the controls, and because of this, nothing seemed to function. Additionally, the group found 3 other cave entrances. The first opening was narrow and had blind corners, so they couldn't get a good idea of what was down there without going inside, but a high-pitched hum could be heard coming from deep inside. The second cave was humid and hot. Pools of water dotted the floor, some barely warm and big enough to be called puddles, while others were bubbling with steam and deep enough to swallow a full-sized man. The last corridor was a beautifully carved hallway. Mosaics lined the walls telling of some unknown history. Seeing a light at the end of the hall, Matthias used his skills to try and sense if anything was at the end of the path. Everything inside of Matthias told him something old and powerful was there, and he convinced the group to go back and reevaluate their options. It took much debate, but the group decided to go back to the second cave, not sure what to make of the hum from the first cave. They went with what they felt at the time was a safer option. After making their way to what at first appeared to be a dead end, they were set on by a nest of giant spiders. The spiders seemed hungry and determined to pull at least one adventurer into its burrow to devour. Surprisingly, everyone worked diligently to ensure no one was taken and swiftly defeated the giant arachnids, only to discover the path continued. Except there were two issues. First, it was underwater, and who knows for how long. The second issue was that the water was intensely hot and had the potential to scald anyone entering it. Matthias, sensing the group's hesitation, volunteered to go and explore the cave so no one else would risk getting injured. Taking off his armor, he braved the scalding water and managed to navigate to a hidden room. The room contained many books, but due to the humidity, most were ruined. Only a few spell scrolls managed to avoid the mold, and he hastily grabbed them. The only other item was a pair of boots, which he inspected and found a crystal about the right size and shape of the one from the center chamber's control panel. Matthias surmised the boots would fit his friend Klaus pretty well. Returning to the main chamber, the group was in high spirits. Maybe we can get out of here, they thought. So they pressed on, hoping to limit the amount of time they spent in their dark labyrinth. And so they moved on to the first cave, with the ominous hum emanating from deep inside. With each passing step, the cave grew more narrow and cramped. All the while, the hum continued to grow in intensity. All of these things contributed to slowing the party down, having to stop several times just to catch their breath, until their narrow corridor finally opened up into a massive chamber. Before them was a cliff covered in some kind of organic crystal. It was hard and strong, but could be melted with heat. The group decides to climb to the top where the hum seems to be coming from. Klaus, donning his new boots, is pleased to discover he can now fly and decides to race to the top. As Gathendriel climbs up, he notices something in the crystal and begins to use his dagger to dig into the substance. Almost at the same time, both he and Klaus come to the same conclusion. They shouldn't be here. From up top, Klaus yells to retreat as a horde of giant wasps begins to chase him. Knowing they can't outrun the swarm, the party choose to fight and hopefully kill enough that they can safely attempt to get away. During the fight, Borgi's eye catches a glimpse of a gem on the corpse of some other long-forgotten adventurer and pockets it, thinking it might come in handy later, which is precisely what it does, as it is the second and last gem needed to power the mining cart system. Returning to the control panel, the party manages to reactivate the carts and speeds quickly down the track, only having to stop a few times for sections where the local wildlife had taken over, but nothing they couldn't handle. After what felt like a significant amount of time had passed, they reached a supply and maintenance area where they decided it was a good place to rest. However, they would get no peace. During their rest, from inside a box, a skull began to scream for help. After being freed from his box, the skull begged the party to take him back to where they had come from, explaining that without the help from a benevolent creature that lives in the mine, he would be forever trapped, unable to die or pass on to the next world. Begrudgingly, the party agreed to take him back and help him move on. Going back wasn't particularly hard, but they were already exhausted, and traveling all the way back to where they started took a lot of the morale from the group. So once again, the party of unlikely acquaintances found themselves back where they started. The skull assured them there was nothing to fear. The creature inside was most helpful and would probably give them something for all their hard work. The creature was excited to see visitors and couldn't wait to hear all about their situation. He apologized to the skull for leaving him in his current predicament and promptly sent him to wherever he was meant to go. The group had many questions, and the serpent explained as best he could to them why they were here, even though he couldn't really be sure where here was specifically. After much conversation, the serpent showed them why he was bound to this place. With a mechanical click, a rotating dais of weapons, armor, and rare magic items rose from the floor. The snake explained that he had made a bet with a grand wizard and ended up losing, so he was now forced to sell the knickknacks and baubles the wizard had accumulated over the years. Further, there are dozens of monoliths that connect this place to others, and if they spend enough, he could allow them to use one to get to the exit of the mine. Fortunately, any creature hostile enough to attack the party usually had some kind of gem fused somewhere on it, meaning they had an abundance of funds to spend, so arms and armor were purchased, and they were shown the way out. After placing a hand on the monolith, they were transported in a flash of light. Opening their eyes, they could see the sun pouring in from multiple cracks in the ceiling. They could smell the salty sea air and feel the warm air from the surface. They could also see one final hurdle, a large and powerful-looking humanoid insect-type creature. It seemed to be very focused on building a pit trap. The party watched for several minutes as the creature sank to the center of the pit and began burying itself. Rather than confront the creature, they decided to let Klaus use his flying boots and set up some ropes to go over the trap, avoiding any conflict with the monster. Finally, they had made it out. Just outside the entrance to the mine sat a dock with a small sailboat and a note from an unknown benefactor, telling them to follow the sun when sailing, and if they make it to the mainland, not to trust the locals. Feeling exhausted, the group spent the night there, planning to sail out in the morning. And that, my friends, is the end of the first chapter for our little group of misfits. There is much more to come, but our time is at an end. But fear not. When I return, I'll share the next chapter with you. Goodbye, until next time, and stay safe.